The silence is unique in the fact that there's no sci-fi or supernatural elements within the story. That doesn't mean it doesn't fit the show, but there are very few episodes that went this route. There's usually always a magic coin, alien, or some kind of unexplainable situation that acts as the basis for an installment of the series. Instead, a strong dislike between the two main characters turns into a twisted bet that by the end becomes a worthy Twilight Zone tale. Jamie Tennyson and Colonel Archie Taylor are members of a frequently attended men's club. Tennyson is infamous for carrying on a conversation for far too long, to the point where he never shuts up. He usually even asks for a loan at the end of his rambling. Craving the peace of mind that comes along with silence, Taylor is able to take no more. He presents Tennyson with a formal wager. If he can remain silent for 1 full year, Taylor will pay him $500,000. Needing the money and eager to prove the older man wrong, Tennyson accepts, and so the bet begins. Jamie is housed in the old game room of the club, where he is constantly monitored with microphones inside a glass enclosure. As the months go by, Taylor is shocked at how long Tennyson is gone without speaking. This is when he starts to taunt the younger man with ideas of his wife having affairs in her loneliness, among other things. Taylor has crossed the line and made it even more personal. But whose will is stronger? Who among them is the better man? Boris Sagal directed what turned into an excellent and memorable episode. Sagal was the father of Katie Sagal of Married with Children and Sons of Anarchy fame, and helmed one other Twilight Zone installment the following season. He was given a great character piece to direct these actors in, which was a fantastic script to work with by Rod Serling. Serling later admitted that he unconsciously based the story off of Anton Chekhov's The Bet, which had a similar type premise featuring a lawyer and a banker debating if life in prison was worse than the death penalty. Francho Tone and Liam Sullivan were magnificent as Taylor and Tennyson, while Cyril de Levante and Jonathan Harris returned to the Twilight Zone with another pair of great turns supporting the leads. The dialogue, direction, and acting here combined perfectly for a strong on all sides effort. The scenes between Tone and Sullivan were some of the best character sequences of the whole second season. The Tennyson character couldn't respond verbally, so Tone carried the words while Sullivan carried the emotion in his facial expressions. I especially love the monologue where Taylor brings Tennyson's wife into his tempting of Jamie to break the bet.
She must be lonely for you, Tennyson. Desperately lonely. She has been seen with other young men.
He's so slimy with his gravelly voice and suggestive demeanor that you can almost see the underlining distress dripping through his pores. As time goes on, Taylor gets more and more nervous, which makes his reactions to Tennyson's refusal of smaller amounts of money to break the bet clue us in on what might really be going on with him. Just how he's shot in those scenes outside the enclosure make him more predatory, but there's always an unspoken sense of desperation. Funnily enough, those scenes were shot that way out of necessity. Francho Tone completed his first day of shooting this episode, which involved everything in the main room of the men's club, without incident. But when he was supposed to show up for day 2 of production, he was nowhere to be found. Turns out, he was in a clinic after suffering an injury that scraped the left side of his face raw. Stories differ about how that actually happened, but his wound made it impossible to shoot all of his face while maintaining continuity. Thus, in everything surrounding Tennyson's glass box, Tone was only shown in profile or with the damaged side of his face obstructed. It actually helped the episode and his character in those sequences. But that wasn't the only challenge cinematographer George T. Clements had to overcome with this shoot. Upon seeing the glass room set, he supposedly said he almost lost his lunch. Clements had no idea how he was going to light the set with all the glass reflecting everything, but being the pro he was, he eventually figured it out. By the time they started shooting, he only had to remove about 2 of the glass panels. To the dismay of Taylor, Tennyson completes the bet. He lasted 1 full year without speaking a word. When he exits to receive the check from Taylor, the old man has to admit that he doesn't have the money. He lost his fortune years ago. But before Taylor leaves in disgrace, Tennyson forces him to stay and writes a note that reads,
I knew I would not be able to keep my part of the bargain. So 1 year ago, I had the nerves to my vocal cords severed.
That was one heck of a wicked double twist. Nothing supernatural, but it's certainly deranged. That tear Sullivan dropped made it even more tragic. The story was setting us up for Taylor not having the money. There are hints dropped as early as the first scene, where he refuses to have the check certified and deposited in Tennyson's name ahead of time. The George character also questions his friend about the money later on, but many people likely saw that turn coming. Tennyson having his vocal cords cut was something I did not expect the first time I watched this, and there was no need for an alien to show up or a time travel mechanism to be implemented. This whole thing could plausibly happen, which makes it that much weirder and unsettling. Looking back, there was at least one small hint to this twist 9 weeks after the bet started. Franklin, the butler character, tells Taylor that Tennyson wasn't eating very well until 8 weeks in. Those first 8 weeks were likely when Jamie's throat was recovering from the vocal cord surgery. It'd be hard for him to swallow until the cut on his neck healed. Brilliant stuff. I can't recommend this episode enough. Even if you know the twist going in, it's a fascinating watch that gives you a different experience on multiple viewings. So for 26 minutes, close your mouth, open your eyes, and listen in. Just don't take any long-term bets about how long you can remain silent, because the price for something like that is quite high. In the Twilight Zone.